Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to do a deep dive into the absolute foundational rules of Islamic contract law.
Specifically, as they apply to marriage, or nikah, right at the very beginning, we're looking at the marriages of the mothers of the believers, the wives of Prophet Muhammad.
Right. And our source material today is, it's a fantastic stack of legal commentaries, hadith collections, and the early historical chronicles. So for you, the curious learner, our mission is to really understand how these foundational rules were established and followed.
Even when the historical records look, well, a little incomplete to our modern eyes.
That's the core tension, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
We have two really distinct, fascinating themes to explore here. First, this puzzle of why the names of witnesses are missing in the records for several of these marriages.
Despite witnesses being, a mandatory legal pillar.
And second, we're going to look at the just astonishing variety in the dowries, the mahr, given to these women. It's a range that tells this profound story about social status, economy, and even freedom itself.
And understanding these contracts is so crucial because they really are the template for millions and millions of marriages that have followed over the last 14 centuries.
So before we get into the mahr, or the missing witnesses, we have to start with the legal figure that is always there, the one who's consistently documented.
The wali.
The wali,
Yeah.
the guardian who gave the bride away. He's representing her family, ensuring her consent, her protection.
Exactly. And in the early documents, his presence and the public celebration, the walima, that was often the priority for the record keepers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The early historians, they were focused on legal lineage, family consent. That's what defined the union in the community's eyes. We see it so clearly. Aisha was given away by her father, Abu Bakr.
Hafsa, by her father, Umar ibn al-Khattab. The family representative was the essential legal marker.
Precisely.
And this sets up our first major legal conundrum. Because if you look at the standard for a valid nikah today, the consensus among the vast majority of Islamic schools is it's absolute.
Witnesses are required.
Witnesses are required. There's a widely accepted hadith that states it very clearly. There is no marriage except with a guardian and two trustworthy witnesses.
That requirement is the rock-solid legal pillar. The marriage has to be public. It can't be a secret. If it's secret and unwitnessed, it's just legally invalid.
But here's the friction point. This is what trips up so many modern readers. The sources say that for several of the Prophet's marriages, and we're talking about key figures here like Aisha, Sauda, Hafsa, the specific names of the two witnesses are just not written down.
They're not in the surviving accounts.
So if witnesses are mandatory, how can these foundational contracts lack that key documentation?
That is the pivotal question, and it really speaks more to the nature of early record-keeping than to any kind of legal flaw. When scholars dig into this, the conclusion is unanimous.
Which is?
All of the Prophet's marriages did have witnesses. The absence of recorded names in books written centuries later, well, that doesn't prove they weren't there at the actual contract signing.
Okay, but for the audience, doesn't that require a bit of a leap of faith? I mean, a strong reliance on academic consensus. If the core documentation is missing a required element, why is everyone so certain they were there?
It comes down to the Prophet's role. He wasn't just a political or spiritual leader. He was the lawgiver. He was the living model for the entire community.
Right.
If he had failed to follow the rules he himself established, like needing two witnesses, it would undermine the entire foundation of Islamic law. To assume he violated his own law is to assume the whole system started in contradiction.
That makes profound sense. The integrity of the lawgiver is totally inseparable from the integrity of the law itself. So, if the witnesses were definitely there, why the omission in the chronicles?
Well, the early historians, they were often writing decades, even centuries after the events. They were focused on capturing the legal ruling, the social lesson, the lineage.
Not the administrative details.
Exactly. The fact that two witnesses were present for a public nikah was often considered a detail too standard to even mention. It would be like documenting that the contracting parties were breathing air. It was just assumed.
It's historical compression, right? We lose the fine print over 1,400 years, but we keep the legal principle. This is also where the Maliki school offers a clarifying nuance, I think.
Yes, exactly. The Maliki school places a greater weight on ilan, which is the public announcement, over the physical presence of two specific people right at the moment of signing.
It doesn't negate witnesses, though.
Not at all, but it emphasizes their function. And their function is publicity. A marriage that is announced at a grand walima, a public feast, is inherently witnessed by the whole community. The goal is validity through publicity.
And this clarity is so important, especially since these historical gaps can sometimes fuel, misconceptions. The sources are crystal clear. Any suggestion that the prophet had non-contractual relationships or anything without a formal nikah, that's considered zina. It's absolutely forbidden in Islamic law.
It is, and it contradicts his entire purpose as the perfect ethical model. His marriages were all legally valid, publicly announced, and they met all the requirements of the nikah contract.
Even if the list of who was standing in the corner taking notes didn't survive the ages.
Exactly.
Okay, so now that we've established that consistency of the legal framework, let's look at the variety of the people involved, the guardians and proxies, because some of these marriages had truly surprising circumstances.
They really did. I mean, you see the strong tradition exemplified by Khadija, where her uncle Amr bin Asad acted as her wali. That confirms the standard role of the male head of the family.
But then you find this lovely exception with Salama. When she married the prophet, her guardian was her own son, Umar bin Abi Salama.
And he was a child, quite young.
So young, and yet he was accepted as the wali. What does that flexibility tell us about how the law was being applied back then?
It shows the law was flexible enough to prioritize the closest blood tie and the family's needs over some rigid age requirement. The law understood that after her husband died, her son was her nearest kin. It validates a very family-centered approach to guardianship.
And if we look even further afield, the marriage of Habiba it's arguably the best documented case we have when it comes to witnessing, precisely because it involved state diplomacy.
Oh, it's the ultimate proxy marriage. Habiba was a refugee in Abyssinia, you have to remember. She was fleeing persecution. Her marriage to the prophet took place thousands of miles away in Absentia.
And the ceremony was performed by the Christian king of Abyssinia, Negus Ashama, acting as the prophet's proxy.
Think about that. That's a powerful political statement. A king acting as a representative for the Muslim leader.
It's incredible.
And critically for our discussion, the event was explicitly witnessed and documented by the prominent Muslim migrants who were there. That includes Jafar bin Abi Talib. It's a textbook example of a nikah fulfilled through a proxy and publicly witnessed in a foreign land.
Then you have the marriage that stood entirely outside of human legal processes, Zainab bin Chash. This is the theological exception that proves the rule.
Absolutely. Her contract was ordained directly by Allah in the Quran. Specifically in Surah Ahzab, it transcended the need for a human wali or witnesses or even a mar. The contract was established in the heavens.
And the sources really capture the theological weight of that, noting how she would boast to the other wives, "Your family's married you off, but Allah married me off from above the seven heavens."
I mean, what a line. And even with that divine distinction, the social function was still fulfilled. The prophet held a massive walima for Zainab, the largest feast of all his marriages.
So he made sure the union was publicly known, celebrated, and witnessed by the entire community.
Exactly. The legal requirement was bypassed by divine decree, but the social requirement of publicity was magnified.
And we should briefly touch on Maria al-Qibtiyya. Her name sometimes comes up when people talk about the lack of mar or witnesses.
Right, and the historical consensus classifies her not as a wife by a formal nikah contract, but as an umawlad, a mother of a child, since she bore the prophet's son, Ibrahim. Her legal status as a concubine meant she wasn't subject to the traditional nikah requirements. That clarifies why those details are missing.
This complexity of statuses and contracts leads us perfectly into the second part of our deep dive.
The highly variable component of the nikah, the mar, the dowry.
The mar. And it's so important to be clear, this is not a price paid for the woman. It is an asset given exclusively to the woman to reinforce her financial security and independence within the marriage.
The sources show a clear standard did emerge for the mar, which was usually 500 dirhams of silver that was given to wives like Aisha and Salama. What does that figure represent, economically?
500 dirhams was substantial. It was equivalent to about 1.5 to 2 kilograms of pure silver.
Yeah.
In that era, that amount would have been a significant economic buffer. It wasn't the extreme wealth of a monarch, but it provided serious financial stability. Enough to purchase maybe 10 camels or a small household?
Something like that, yes. It ensured the wife had independent assets.
That makes sense. It establishes a consistent standard that isn't prohibitive, but is also meaningful. We also see variations, like 400 dirhams for wives like Saada and Hafsa.
That slight difference likely reflects the context. Often, 400 dirhams was considered a standard dowry for a widow, whereas 500 might be associated with a woman marrying for the first time. The community was establishing standards based on current socio-economic norms.
Okay, now let's look at the powerful exceptions that break that silver standard. And we have to start with Khadija. Her mahr predated the formal codification of Islamic law. She received 20 young male camels.
20 bakra, yes. And 20 camels, especially young male ones, represented exceptional wealth in that context. It was an extremely high-value asset.
It reflected her status.
It reflected Khadija's immense status as a wealthy noblewoman of the Quraysh, even before her marriage to the Prophet. Her mahr gives us this fantastic snapshot of the pre-Islamic economic structure for the nobility.
Now contrast that with the mahr in kind given to Salama. She got the standard silver, plus a detailed list of household items.
Right. A bed, a water vessel, and a handmill.
That is the ultimate practical mahr.
It is. It shows that the mahr was highly customized. It was designed not just for abstract wealth, but for the immediate practical needs of the wife starting her life in a new home. It's such a wonderful human detail.
And on the complete other side of the spectrum, Zainab bint Jahsh again stands alone. She received none for her mahr because, as we said, her contract was celestial.
It required no earthly component. But then we jump to the absolute highest monetary mahr, Habiba's dowry. Remember, married in Abyssinia, she received 4,000 dirhams.
4,000. That is astronomical compared to the 500 dirham standard. What was the purpose of such a huge amount?
It was a gesture of immense diplomatic honor. The amount was paid by the Negus of Abyssinia himself on the Prophet's behalf. It wasn't just a financial transaction, it was a political statement, a declaration of alliance and immense respect from one head of state to another. It elevated Habiba's status to reflect that international honor.
This raises the most significant question of all, I think. What happens when the mahr isn't gold or silver or camels, but something priceless? The unique cases of Safiya bint Huyay and Juwairiya bint al-Harith.
Both women were war captives, and the sources confirmed that their freedom, their manumission, was their mahr. The Prophet freed them, and that act of liberation was the marriage gift.
The socio-legal impact there is. It's transformative. If the mahr is freedom, what does that do to the woman's social standing?
Instantly. It elevates them from being a captive, a slave, to being a free woman, the wife of the Prophet, and thereby a mother of the believers. But the true depth of this is seen in the consequence of Juwairiya's marriage.
The ripple effect of that single contract. Tell us about that.
So, Juwairiya belonged to the Banu Mustalik tribe, and many of them were taken captive in a skirmish. When the marriage took place, the Muslims who held her tribesmen as captives immediately began releasing them.
Why?
They reasoned that they could not, in good conscience, hold the Prophet's in-laws as captives.
Wow. So one marriage contract, sealed by the mahr of manumission, immediately liberated not just Juwairiya herself, but up to 100 households of her tribe. That is social justice achieved through a legal mechanism.
It is profound. It demonstrates that the marriage contract, which on the surface looks like a private legal agreement, was used as a revolutionary tool for social transformation and, well, mass humanitarian release. Aisha herself is quoted saying that no woman brought greater blessing to her people than Juwairiya.
So what does this entire deep dive tell us about the foundations of the nikah?
It really reveals this fascinating duality. On one hand, you have the strict, unyielding structure of Islamic law. The requirements, wali, mahr, and witnesses or publicity were always met. It shows this utter consistency between the law and the Prophet's practice, even when our historical documentation is sparse.
And on the other hand, you see this incredible adaptability and humanity in the details. The mahr was flexible enough to honor Khadija's nobility with camels.
Secure Habiba with diplomatic gold, provide practical items to Salama.
And most crucially, offer the greatest gift possible, manumission, which elevated the status and secured the freedom of entire communities.
And I think this is the final thought to leave you with. The historical records show that the Muslim marriage contract, the nikah, was structured not merely as a transaction of wealth or a recognition of state honor. In its most powerful application, it served as an engine for social equity and change. Reflect on what it means that the terms of a single marriage contract could fundamentally alter the legal status, the freedom of 100 households, proving that the greatest dowry is not what is bought, but what is liberated.